Today, we've got Betsy Bodeker, who is the director of the Center for Plant and Life Sciences for the St. Louis Community College, and is director of the regional programs for all the campuses, but she's based there at Bridge Park. Betsy, I thank you for joining us today and putting together this presentation.
I appreciate the opportunity, Kelly, to talk a little bit about what we do here at the community college and how we can really be working towards a similar goal in terms of that workforce development and the very much needed workforce development. So as Kelly said, I am the district director for the Center for Plant and Life Sciences, which is a satellite campus of St. Louis Community College. We're most closely affiliated with the Florissant Valley campus, although we have a number of campuses located throughout the St. Louis region. I went ahead and I left in our little mission statement because sometimes I feel quite sappy about this, but I really do believe in the mission of the college, which is that we really want to change lives, the everyday people that we know and that we can help make a difference in their life, that we can provide a very accessible, affordable option for them in terms of educational opportunities and a lot of financial support for them throughout that process. And so, yeah, I'm totally bought into the mission of the college, so I just had to throw that in there. But our main purpose, you know, we're kind of an odd little part of the St. Louis Community College because we don't really fit in what the campuses do exactly, because we do a lot of different things in a very small space with just a very few people. And so I'm always talking about how great the staff is here, because we really do a lot more every day, I think, than, you know, what is typically expected of folks. I think that we continually go above and beyond to try and support the local area. But basically, we are a center of excellence, and so we're going to support that plant and life science industry here in the region. We do have a lot of industry partnerships, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. But we also want to support any of the efforts related to the programs here, and we mostly have our Life Science Lab Assistant program and our Biotechnology program that are located here within the center and is really their home. But then we also work with some of the other programs, and the one that pops to mind most readily is the horticulture group at Merrimack. And we typically offer through their program, there's a micro propagation class, and I was just talking to their person, the head of their group, Jerry Pence, yesterday, and he thinks that we'll be offering, if we can accommodate them, that they'll be offering that micro propagation class here on site every fall if we can accommodate them. And I think that we would love to accommodate them because it's a great, it's one of those intersections between biotech and another industry that is really highly valuable to what we do here at the center. And so there's a lot of those intersections between biology and chemistry, biology, horticulture, biology and IT or programming. And so there's a lot of those crossover industries now that I think that we can be more focused on in kind of providing additional training for those things. And then we also do a lot of things like right now we have an NSF grant to develop some genome editing coursework. And so we are busy working on that, as well as educational activities for K through 12. And so we can bring students from their high school or middle school here and do on-site workshops. We can go to their schools and work with them in their facilities. And we can also bring our mobile tech unit, which is basically a big trailer that's a lab on wheels, and we can take that to various events throughout the community just to give folks a little touch of what biotech might be. And so we have a lot of different activities that happen here under the Center for Plant and Life Sciences umbrella. We do have two programs that are basically live here. One of them is the Life Science Laboratory Assistant program, and that is a certificate of specialization. It's a very low level entry type of program. And then the slightly higher level is the biotechnology program. And it's an applied science degree. And I'm going to talk about both of these programs as we move forward here. So the Life Science Lab Assistant program is a 16 credit hour program, and it includes a number of general studies in mathematics and oral communications, as well as providing a couple laboratory classes, Bio 100 and Bio 104. And we've had a lot of trouble with this program, especially as we've tried to navigate through the pandemic, because it's very challenging to do technical training when you don't actually get to see the student. So having that face-to-face is just vitally important to success there. And what we are really focused on now is recruitment. And a lot of this is we're working with some of the high school groups and districts in the region, trying to develop some dual credit, dual enrollment pathways so that students could potentially be graduating high school with their high school diploma and a Life Science Lab Assistant certificate. And that would mean that they would be eligible for some entry-level positions that could utilize things like, glass washing, media prep, autoclave sterilization of materials from your lab. And so we are working closely with Danforth to try and identify where we could have a couple of these positions placed that could maximize their usefulness, not only for the student, but for the industries in this region as well. And so we have a lot of these areas that we've got the edge right behind us in the parking lot. We've got a number of folks in this building. We've got Helix Center is about a mile away. Danforth is across the parking lot the other way. And we've got Cortex and Biogenerator downtown. And so I feel that there is some place that we could be putting some of these students in, providing internships basically that are a commitment so that they could continue that education. So what we really want is to embed these folks in some sort of laboratory situation where they're exposed to other folks who are a little bit above them to encourage them to continue their education. The biotechnology certificate is probably the one that you're the most familiar with. If you hear me ever talk about anything, it's usually the biotech program. Good luck getting me to shut up about that. But it is, we have actually two tracks within this program. And one is we have many of our students that come to us, they have that 4-year credential already. They have a bachelor's in a life science, but the focus of a 4-year institution is very different than that of a technical training program. So they might have the bachelor's degree, but they don't have the laboratory skills. And so they actually find great difficulty securing employment, although maybe not these days, they wouldn't. But previous to the pandemic, they would come to us and they would be able to complete 1 year of core program courses, which would include our major biotechnology 1 and 2 courses. And then there's advanced topics, which I'll go into in a little more detail, which are ways that our students can kind of specialize in certain techniques that they might have some greater interest in. And so it's pretty low investment in terms of credit hours. And then at the end of that year, they have a certification in biotechnology. Workplace learning is not required. It is an option for these folks. If they want to do it, they can. And what they see is many of our applied science students having great opportunities when they complete an internship. And so many of them do go ahead and actually opt in for a workplace learning experience. The other route is the 2-year applied science degree in biotechnology. You don't need previous college. You do have to do a lot of your general studies with this program, but it is an applied science degree. It's about 2 years and 60 credit hours long. Many of our certificate seeking and applied science degree students are actually in classes together. So Biotech 1 and 2, you've got a good mix of folks in there that are, 4-year students and straight from high school or no previous college experience. For the completion of this biotech degree, though, that 3-hour credit hour internship is required. And so usually they complete this after they have finished Biotech 1. I like to not try and place them until they have a good number of skills under their belt already, so that they can get the most out of the internship and they can provide the most support for the folks that we place them with. So there's a lot of play in that too. So we can make judgment calls based on the student, the situation, the semester, what it might happen to be. So our program, like I said, is a technical training program. We do provide lectures that kind of give an overview of a topic or a concept, but the majority of the time that we spend with our students, they are hands-on in the lab working. And so this program was originally developed with the involvement of the industry, where they were basically telling us what they would need from somebody in order to hire them. What are the skills that they would find most valuable in this kind of applied science degree? We're a very small program, but we are very successful. We do this well, and we have great results with our students long term. They find employment, they stay employed long term, and we're just really, really pleased with that statistic. Some of the things that we talk about in these, we try to implement some of these pieces in just about everything that we do. General education, of course, includes things like communication, English, math, blah, blah, blah. We do include biomedical ethics, history, computer applications. But those soft skills are something that is really important for the industry, and not just for biotech industry. When we have our yearly workforce, state of the workforce meeting here in St. Louis, and I'm sure it's similar across Missouri and pretty much nationwide, a lot of those soft skills are always touted as something that they wish people coming into the workforce would be a little bit better with. And so we do try to incorporate things within our program to encourage some of those better communication skills, appropriate email, how to do a presentation, how to talk to a peer, how to talk to, someone that maybe is outside of your biotech field, so that they have some understanding of what it is you are doing and what you need from them. And so it's we really do try to be as comprehensive as possible. I know one of the big aspects, so this genome editing coursework that we're trying to develop, we have the NSF funding for it, but we have pulled together our industry partners for this as well, where we want to hear what they think is going to be vital to include in this genome editing coursework, which is going to be 2 separate courses. And it was pretty much unanimous. Some of the big conversations that need to be happening in this course have to do with, ethics. What is ethically okay to be editing, genomically speaking? And so we are definitely taking great steps to include a lot of those ethical discussions within that coursework, because we do feel it's a very important aspect. I actually think with genome editing, Jennifer Doudna, who's one of the discoverers of this technology, does an excellent job getting her face out there to basically just spur some of these conversations, because I think the more you can talk about it, the more people are going to maybe not be so scared of it, maybe understand it a little bit and have a better way to make judgments about what is ethical to use this for, and where is the line? Where should we draw the line so that we don't cross it? And so, there's all kinds of different aspects. The technical training is obviously extremely important, but we want to make sure that our students coming out of this program are well-rounded and are thinking about things in an appropriate way that they can communicate not only with other scientists, but with community members as well. A lot of what they get hands-on training has to do with a lot of the instrumentation. We take great pains here to make sure that we have the current instruments and equipment that folks are going to see once they enter a bioscience laboratory in the industry or in academia. And so things, we want to make sure we've got the same centrifuges, we've got the same equipment that they're getting hands-on experience with, because that's just going to make them even more valuable when they get out there into the industry. And so just to kind of give you an example, one of the very first classes that we have in the lab, in the biotech program, is the basic lab methods. This actually is in the life science lab assistant program too. So some of those courses in the life science lab assistant will actually carry over into the biotechnology program, which is really nice to have that stackable credential option. But in this very first laboratory class, and we spend a lot of time talking about safety, but then we do some experiments using centrifugation, gel electrophoresis, spectrophotometric readings, laboratory math and statistics, and we, above all else, are really focused on how to get students to work as a team, because that's really, you know, how most of the industries work these days, that you're never in a silo by yourself. You are working with, you know, multiple teams, different projects have different teams, and you need to be able to work on those teams and hold up what your responsibilities are for that team. And so teamwork is very much a focus of what we do in our technical training. We do, again, have a strong focus on the industry standards. And so what we are told is that laboratory, from the industry, these laboratory skills that are vital, obviously pipetting skills. Everything that we do in molecular biology involves using these microliter pipetters, and you have to have good skills with that, because if you don't, you jeopardize everything that you do. And so even in that initial Bio 104 class, we actually have a calibration unit here. And I know for when I teach this class, I require that they turn in a printout from that calibration unit that demonstrates to me that they are able to pipette the same volume with less than 10% error. And that's part of their practical, their lab practical, so they can't graduate without that. They can't graduate from 104 without that little ticket saying, yes, I can do this skill, and I can have less than 10% error. They get better the longer they continue through the program, the more pipetting they do, the more they hone those skills. But if you start with, you know, things in the right direction, it makes it a lot easier to improve those. Other things like record keeping, how to keep a laboratory notebook. This was quite the challenge over the pandemic, because we actually, I know I personally tried like 3 different types of electronic notebooks, none of which I liked. And so I've actually gone back to now that we're back in person, I've gone back to the normal hardcore regular old laboratory notebook, because I feel that it's a nice, I hate to say keepsake for them too, but I know previously a lot of our students would take that notebook with them to interviews to kind of illustrate how good they are at documenting what they're doing in the lab. And it makes an impression on who's interviewing them to take a peek at that and see what it looks like. Knowledge of just general molecular biology techniques, things like cell culture, chromatography, how to clone, how to genotype something, how to do a plasmid construction, all kinds of protein accessibility and analysis, and of course the all-encompassing math skills, which make everyone a little crazy. But when they get through our coursework, they are pretty well versed at much of the different types of math that they're going to be using within the field. So other things, you know, again, I mentioned the notebook keeping already. Understanding of some of those good manufacturing practices is really important also. And so we do focus a lot of the standards we bring up in classes and various lectures. Running a PCR is essential. How to do some protein work, such as an ELISA, where it's basically an antibody-based detection methodology. Chromatography, we do some sequencing. Cell culture, again, is a huge part of Biotech 1. And we've been told by the industry it's such an important thing for the students to understand and be able to do, because just about every company uses some aspect of cell culture and aseptic technique, and they really need students and workers to be able to do those things. And of course, more focus on teamwork. Troubleshooting and problem solving is also very much a focus as they advance through the program. It's really important that we are producing technicians that can be pretty independent. And you know, there's several layers of independence, of course, but I think having the ability to think about what you're planning experimentally, being very deliberate in that thought process, potentially thinking about where things could go wrong, and then being able to have the troubleshooting skills when things do go wrong, because they always do, to be able to look at, did I use the appropriate controls? Is this going to help me understand what went wrong with this particular program or this particular experiment? And so how to prep for an experiment, look at the materials that you're going to need, make sure everything is available, how to plan your project, using those skills and techniques that you've learned from other parts of the program. And then when things don't go exactly as you anticipate them to go, how to troubleshoot that so it will go better the next time. And these are skills that are really important for somebody to just be planted at a bench and be able to provide as much support for their industry as possible. And so we pride ourselves on, that we produce students that are able to do this very effectively. And I think that's a big part of why we do have such a successful placement rate. So I mentioned advanced topics. All of our students are required to take, regardless of which path, if they're on the certificate or the 2-year applied science, everyone is required to take 2 advanced topics courses. And these have different specialties. And so there is one on bioinformatics, there's one on forensics, proteomics, qPCR, plant transformation, RNA interference, bioprocessing, genome editing is the one that's currently in development. And so we teach very general concepts in 104 Biotech 1 and 2. And so we cover a lot of different things, plants, we cover mammalian systems. And so when we get to the portion of advanced topics, this is a place where our students are able to really focus in a little bit more. Maybe they're not interested in plants. Maybe they're interested in other stuff like, high scale manufacturing, like bioprocessing. Maybe they're interested in the computer aspects. And so bioinformatics would be a great choice for them. We ask them to take 2 of these courses to complete their program requirements. But this gives them a real nice taste of some of the other. The field is so incredibly broad. And I know many of you on this meeting right now recognize this. And so when you say biotech, it encompasses a lot of stuff. And so there are more classes than what I have listed here that we have on our list for advanced topics. And so it's their opportunity to learn more about something that they have heard about that they find of interest. And so this might lead them to a different internship than they would have initially been wanting. And so we again pride ourselves on these advanced topics courses, many of which do have some sort of project-based element to them. And I know like qPCR is one of the ones that I teach, and we spend the first maybe third of the semester talking about many of the different aspects of qPCR, but 2/3 of that semester is them completing a project and completing the analysis related to that project. And so we really do try to get them as well versed as possible in all aspects of experimental design, setup, execution, and data analysis. Workplace learning is that final piece for the biotech program. This is their internship. And we have a lot of great industry partners, and they are most of the time very able and willing to help us with placements. I feel very strongly that the internships need to be paid situations. And so we do work very hard to have external sources of funding to support those students as they complete this internship. I personally feel like it's already enough of a challenge for them to navigate through the educational system. If they're already working 2 or 3 jobs, I think it's incredibly unfair to ask them, oh, you got to quit a job to go do this, free internship, but you have to do it to complete your program. So I feel very strongly that we need to be providing that financial support. And so most of the time we bring them on as part-time St. Louis Community College temporary employees. We pay them, and then based on the requests that we have from our industry partners and the interest of the students, we can place those students with an industry partner. We pay them, but they work for that other company. And so their 20 hours a week is spent with that other company, supporting them however they're being directed by their direct supervisor. This is a great relationship that we have. When we don't have funding or when we're unable to pay the student ourselves, because most of these industry partners have already reaped the benefits of multiple interns for free, they are more than willing to step up and provide that financial support for the student when we're not able to. And so it has worked extremely well for all of us. More than 30% of the time, those internships that are 20 hours a week lead to permanent employment with that internship placement company. This is exactly, that statistic right there is exactly why some of those certification seeking students, where the internship is not a requirement for their program, do opt for it, because they see the AAS students going through getting an internship placement and then getting a full-time job from that. And so they went in on that, and I don't blame them. We do maintain a high placement rate in industry, regardless of if they get picked up by that internship company or not. If they are not picked up by that company that they're working for with the internship, it is a very short, quick job hunt, and they are picked up by somebody locally. So we do have that high placement rate. Our students get employed, they stay employed long term, and those are things that we can be, really proud of. In addition to that very livable wage that they're going to get in a biotech lab. So these internships really provide a great interaction with our industry, and we really feel strongly about them being paid internships. And the companies are very grateful for the help. So what ends up happening a lot of these times, especially startup companies that we're working with, they don't have a ton of funding. And so they're very grateful for that, free 20-hour-a-week internship help. And then maybe that helps them get their next round of funding, which enables them to expand and grow and stay in the region and hire the intern that they just finished training. As I mentioned previously, we are a very successful program, but we are small. And we definitely took a small hit with the pandemic. We've awarded over 200 degrees since we moved to Bridge Park. We right now, at this particular moment in time, have 55 declared majors. Normally it's about double that. And so we are really working hard on the recruitment aspect, because I know the college in general, but our program in particular definitely took a major hit over the last couple of years with COVID. As we have graduates from our program, we do have a 94% placement rate of our students in a life science industry. And so we're extremely proud of that statistic and work very hard to keep that going. We also like to be very straight with our students and be very clear that this biotech degree, it's going to get you in the door. It's going to get you a job, and that's great. But if you want to have any chance of advancement, you are really going to need that 4-year bachelor's degree in order to have opportunities in the future. And so we really do push hard that they consider a bachelor's, and I'm happy to say that most of our students do continue on in a part-time situation. They're working full-time, and they will continue their education to try and complete that bachelor's in a part-time program. So as that is an interest, we definitely maintain articulation agreements with many of the local 4-year institutions so that they can transfer from the biotech into this 4-year and start working on that bachelor's. Probably just for economic reasons more than anything else, we do get a lot of folks that are going to transfer to UMSL just because that's the most cost effective. Although I know Webster has a lot of opportunities right now for community college students and they have had for the last couple of years. So I do usually, invite our students to check them out, all the ones that we have listed with articulation. And then in addition, I'll just say one of the weird things that we do here at the center is we do have a contract research organization. I think when people hear CRO, they think more clinical trials. And so I've kind of started calling it a contract research group. It's a way that we can work with the industry, particularly like startup groups that might need some laboratory access. Maybe they need a little bit of help with a project. Sometimes we get submissions to do, hey, I have these samples, I need, sequencing done or qPCR analysis, access to equipment, potentially interest in working with an intern and other support. We're very flexible in how we can help our local industry. And if we can, we usually try and come up with a way to assist them. I think initially, many of you know my predecessor, Richard Norris, and I think when I first joined in 2009, I think we expected maybe we would be placing interns more with our Pfizers and Bayers of the world. But what's actually turned out to be the case is these really small startup companies are where we have the biggest, impact, and where our students find the most valuable internships, because they are exposed to so many different aspects of the business, because there's only, a handful of people that work at that company. And so one of the things that we can do with these small startups is that we can enter into a lab use agreement with them. And for a small monthly fee, they can access all the equipment in our lab. And I like to use this, our Biorad gel imager runs about $25,000 to buy one of these. And a startup company could literally pay us a monthly fee for 6 years before they would come close to that one piece of instrumentation that people use daily when they're doing analysis using gel electrophoresis. And so having access to some of the higher end equipment that we have on site, and we have several $1 million of equipment that's very high end, things like flow cytometer, droplet digital systems, qPCR systems. And so none of these are cheap. And so having access to those can really assist those companies to move on to the next level of funding for their, doing their proof of concept or whatever it happens to be. And so we can definitely help with lab uses. So, I also like to always point out that, yes, we have a successful program, but we're not done because especially in biotech, this field, it just seems like it is constantly changing, and the pace of it all is accelerating. And I don't think that's just biotech. I think that's business in general and the world in general. But we're never done. We always need to be checking in with our advisory board. We need to be listening when the industry comes to us, like for the genome editing. The whole reason that NSF grant came along is because we had industry poking us saying, hey, you don't have coursework in this, we need it. We need students to understand this. We need students to be able to do it. We need you to develop some courses. And that's exactly how and why we went to the NSF and requested funding. So there's many things that can change this success if we don't keep our eye on the ball. It is fragile, so we need to always be checking in with the industry, making sure that we are continuing to teach the things that are relevant in the field. And we need to, really be aware that one company's interest might be very different from another company's interest. So we should never just listen to one person. We should be pulling in groups of people that represent a cross section of the industry, so that we're never kind of veering off course, if you will. So who cares? Everybody cares, I know. But I definitely am feeling the pressure and the stress right now. In my 30+ years in this biotech industry, in my 14 years here at the college running the CRO, and in the 2 years since I've been in the district director position, I have never seen the biotech workforce industry in such dire need of workers. And so, of course, I want to get more students in our program, but we need to get more students in our programs, because the industry needs workers. They need them yesterday. As we came out of the pandemic, we had it kind of went to this, I'm just going to be in this holding pattern, as we were in the thick of it. But the industry in general came shooting out of that pandemic, and they were ready to start adding people. And I have more requests for interns, and it used to be maybe I'd have requests for interns and I could fill maybe all of them, but maybe 1 or 2 requests. And that was before the pandemic. Now I have multiples. I have like 2 or 3 times the number of requests that I have students to put in those positions. So we desperately need workers. Startups, I think, are especially fragile during this time too, because their access is very limited in terms of who they can get in there to help them. But we really need to solve this problem and get some recruitment tools in place that are going to be more effective at helping us fill our program classes. Because many of our companies are really being quite dependent on us at this point. Community impact can be tremendous. If we are not able to fill some of this workforce, they're going to pull it from somewhere else. Maybe these companies are just going to decide that we can't provide the workforce and up and leave. And that would have tremendous impact for the local area and Missouri in general. And I think that, we're working hard to make sure that does not happen. Anytime I'm talking to students or community members, I like to point out that we need STEM. STEM, offers steady employment. They're great career options. They're very stable. Any of the economic downturns that we've seen in the past 10 years, the biotech industry has not really seen some of the same downturns that other industries have. And so despite the misconceptions, I think what I like to say is you weren't born knowing how to drive a car or how to, bake cookies. Someone showed you how to do that. But those are skills that we have kind of normalized. Everyone has to know how to do those. But I really think that in the STEM field, most of the stuff that we do, they're really simple things. It's just a matter of somebody showing you how to do it. Employment trends, I always like to throw a little economic piece in here. Across the US, the STEM occupations are anticipated to grow maybe up to 10% or more. I actually think in Missouri, that's going to be a little bit higher than that. Couple things from our state of the workforce meeting this year was that as we went through the last 12 months of the pandemic, most people were kind of holding steady with the number of folks that they were planning on hiring. But as we've come out, and you can kind of see here for the increased employment option here, most companies 2021 are anticipating growing and adding headcount. This isn't necessarily biotech focused, but I think that that's kind of, we're definitely seeing some of that, right? Where we can't go to Schnucks or to a restaurant or anywhere really without seeing a help wanted sign. Hey, apply within, we're hiring now. So I think that there's a lot of jobs out there. We just need to kind of motivate that workforce to get back into it. Just going to wrap up saying final thoughts. We're high value to students. We're economical in terms of how much it costs to attend college. We have a high placement rate in the biotech industry. This has a positive impact on the local industry, on growth, and potential new jobs, which are around the corner all the time. These are just a couple of our former interns that are both working in the industry right now. Lauren Beck at the time only had her applied science degree, but she beat out 3 other folks with 4-year bachelor's degrees when they hired her. She has since completed her bachelor's degree, and Max is working steadily at CoverCrest since he was an intern. So there's a lot of stability there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, address any other concerns, talk about whatever you want.
Well, Betsy, we've got a great question that is offered by Frances Creighton, just posted it up. She said, are your CRO contracts only annual in nature, or can shorter terms be negotiated for project-specific work here?
We've done both. And so we've done a lot of project-based, and sometimes we don't even necessarily have to have a contract for that. We will give, we'll provide a quote on, what we think it's going to take to complete the work. And then we usually just invoice at the completion of the project. Lab uses can be really I hate to say any interval that you want, but we're very flexible. If we do a lab use, we get it signed by everybody. and we have written in the contract, okay, maybe you're only going to come into our labs based on the nature of your work. Maybe you're going to do 1 week every month that you're going to be in here. And so then we can work out, okay, we're going to invoice you for 1 week's work in our lab spaces versus a whole month. And so we have lots of flexibility in how we can design your access. And if you have project-based, we definitely need to talk about the specifics of that to make sure that we have the capability to do that. Like I said, we have a small staff, and a lot of times we're pretty thinly spread. And so I like to be very clear and realistic on what the expectations are in terms of timelines.
And he has a follow-up question of, do you have a list of the available equipment?
I do. And if I should have put my email on here. I am happy to send you all the information that we have. I will drop my email in the chat. Let me see. Let me do this and everyone. My email is, yes, I have to speak while I type. If you want to just shoot me an email, I will give you a list of documents that you can see the equipment that we have, the types of services that we can help you with. We are absolutely happy to provide any of that information that might be of interest.
Okay. And Emily asks a question, are industry professions able to take any advanced topic classes like genome editing?
That's a great question. Thank you, Emily. I know Emily. Yes, actually, our advanced topics, that is one of the other unique things about our advanced topics courses, is that they're open to industry people. You don't have to be enrolled in our biotech programs at all in order to enroll into those advanced topics courses. qPCR is one that we've definitely had a lot of outside interest. I've had numerous folks from various industries sign up and take that class. This past summer when we offered it, we actually had 2 folks from the St. Louis Zoo that had signed up and participated in that class. And so it is open to anybody that, as long as you have a little bit of background so that you can navigate what the lecture material is going to cover. You are absolutely willing and able to take any of those classes. You just need to get an override from myself or Greg Langland, the biotech coordinator.
Francis has asked if can company employees work in the lab as well? If so, do you require training and certification?
Yes, they can. If they're employees of your company, your insurance coverage will cover them while they're in our lab space. Most of the time, we count on whoever the partner is to provide whatever training is necessary to be safe in the lab. There is several different equipment pieces that we require training on before we allow you to use without supervision. And those would be things like our sequencer, our droplet digital system. Those require training by us in order to be able to use them. There are just a couple of pieces of equipment that do incur additional extra charges for use. And the sequencer and the droplet digital system I think there's one other one, but those are the 2 main ones that, in addition to the lab use, there will be operational fees on that, just because they do cost a certain amount for us to run, and we need to at least break even on your operating it. Hopefully that makes sense. You can absolutely, so Francis continued, are we able to bring our own supplies? You can absolutely bring your own supplies. We don't have, let me be clear, we do not have like a secured area for you to store a large amount of stuff within our space. We can usually find a cabinet or a drawer for you. If you're just like one individual with a company, that usually is plenty of space. Most of the other companies that work with us do have other space somewhere else that they have some equipment or some personnel that are located there. But there would be a small amount of storage, but not like a huge amount. So you can bring your own supplies. We can also allow you to use some of ours, and just we will invoice you for replacement costs. And so it just is a matter of keeping track of what you use from our supplies. So one last question from Francis. Are you able to order chemicals and pharmaceuticals, or is that your responsibility? So I don't have a clear answer for that. I'm going to say it depends. If you don't have any additional lab space, you can absolutely order and have it shipped here. There are occasions where we will order for you. It works better for us if we can use a credit card that you provide. We do have some ability to order and invoice you later, but just know that our internal systems for ordering can be quite lengthy and cumbersome. And so we just ask that if we're going to order something for you and invoice you for that cost, that you give us sufficient time to order that and get those materials in. And we don't really have an overhead rate that's kind of built into our lab use agreement. Christopher Kennedy raised his hand.
Yeah, be careful answering him.
Yeah, I know.
That's not fair at all. Great presentation. I'm glad that the MOBIO breakthroughs are recorded like this. I just had a conversation with my junior high son who asked, like, how do I know what jobs I would be interested in? And it really hones in on your presentation. You did a phenomenal job. I love the intersection of the career opportunity, the career pathway, and industry training. And so I commend you for, putting this all together in a shareable format. And I know from my standpoint, I've seen the successful case studies and been a part of them where somebody gets exposed to a potential new career pathway through this avenue. Do you have any like home run scenario or stories of that where somebody's gone from didn't really even know of a career path and going through your program and finding a great placement?
Chris, I'd probably have more than one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I can tell the short story of New Leaf Symbiotic,
yeah,
who started in our lab space with one senior scientist. They had no lab space of their own. They had no footprint here in St. Louis at all. They had one senior scientist at the time. It was Greg Bogosian, and he is a former Monsanto guy. And he requested, could he have 3 biotech interns to work with him? And I'd never assigned 3 students to anyone else ever before. And against my better judgment, I went ahead and did it. And that company grew out of that bioprocessing lab of our space. Once they grew and got that first round of funding, which was, I don't remember how many millions of dollars, they, instead of making the choice to move out of St. Louis, because both of the guys that were running it were actually from the East Coast, they made the decision to remain here in St. Louis. And they now have lab space in this building. The first move they made was they hired all 3 of those former interns that had worked for them initially. And one of those interns remains with the company, now leads their biofermentation group. And, it just is, it's amazing to see that kind of thing. They now have, I want to say, over 50 folks, and about 25% of their employees are community college graduates.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, and I know those exist. And I think that's, sometimes when we see labels for different organizations, that helps us really drill into all that happens to really launch successful organizations. So again, thanks for all the efforts on this one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments.
I lost $5 thinking that Christopher was going to ask about coming in and making some hooch on the weekend.
Well, we have had actually, Chalmette Vineyards had come in and had used some cloned yeast to try and, what is it, the resveratrol That's the good thing in the red wine. I can never remember exactly what the name of it is, but they had cloned some yeast to produce that for white wine. And they came in and did like a large scale prep of the yeast to use in their fermentation process back at the vineyard.
Okay, then now we're going to get Tyler McClay interested. So any other questions? They don't have to come through me or be or through the chat.
I have a question. Betsy, most industries that I'm involved in are enveloped by some regulatory body, right? And there are some rules and regs that you have to follow for every industry, particularly in the bioprocessing industry. FDA has a big footprint.
Oh yeah.
Through their PAT. For us, we're analytical guys. For us, they have this PAT initiative. And there are all these guidance documents that I think your students should have some exposure to, because not all of your students take the career path of working in a laboratory.
No.
In fact, you show on your, I think it was your instruction slide, a nice industrial background. So,
Yes.
so those are the kind of areas that I work in, but I mean, not just having the skill set of knowing how to do things, right, tasky things, but having the oversight of the regulatory body that's really directing all these people, you know, from the upstream processing where it starts, I mean,
Right.
where I start, and to the downstream processing where the yields of the therapeutic proteins are, you know, harvested. So you know, if you should have that integrated into your program, and then I think that makes that student a lot more attractive when they start to have conversations, because I've been doing this for 41 years, and I have had to learn languages from the chemical industry to the petrochemical industry to the pharmaceutical industry, and they all have a different set of adjectives that are used and rules and regs that you need to be familiar with if you want to be accepted, right? I mean, you know, you get a foreign student to come in and he can't speak English, you go, well, this is going to be a nightmare. And it's the same kind of principle in industry. And so becoming familiar with all of the terms and all the rules and what drives and regulates those industries is really important. So that PAT initiative is really a document that probably should be integrated. I would suggest you to look into it. So
what I'm going to say is that, you know, really at every point throughout the program, I know in 104, we talk about all the different regulatory agencies that are involved in various production processes or good manufacturing, you know, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
We do have a regulatory class, which is, I believe, a required course. We had some curriculum changes go through about a year ago, and I believe it is, there's a couple of things in the class, but some of it is all about the regulatory systems in place for biomanufacturing.
Right.
And so that is part of the requirements of the program these days. And that course, about a third to a half of it is all about what are the different regulatory agencies, what are the different kinds of things that have to be, you know, considered when you're in a regulated industry area. And so there is a class like that in place that we are offering within the program that's required for their students.
Good. Part of that also, you know, it's not the same thing, but you know, they talk about electronic records as opposed to writing down in a notebook. But I mean, I know that's separate, but it stimulated that thought about the regulation when you talked about your notebook.
Yeah.
Keeping so.
Well, and we just, you know, we work with Thermo Fisher, and this is me and my senior scientist here at the center. We've just completed putting together a customized training program for Thermo Fisher for some of their employees. That's all, we're calling it BRAT. I think it's a great name, but it's Biomanufacturing Research and Technical Training Program. And it is for folks already employed in the field, but the regulatory aspects of that were a huge part of what we're working with them to make sure that every employee, even if they're not in one of those regulatory areas, understands what's involved with those regulatory agencies and what are the requirements for the product at the end. And just because I think it makes them a more valuable asset.
Oh,
if they can-
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, if they understand all parts of the process a little bit better, even if they're not the ones doing it, having that understanding can make you better at your job.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Excellent. I appreciate your comments.
Uh-huh.
Well, everybody, we're up against our the 11 o'clock hour. We thank everyone for participating. Betsy, fantastic job as always.